The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Prismatic Words by Lucas Million. 12 stories of the beautifully macabre, from cosmic terrors such as Force of Nature and The Initiated to the gross and comedic Chunky and the somber dread of Orca. Prismatic Words runs the gamut of Million's unique style of horror. Each tale reflects the aura of emotions its story hopes to convey in a unique paperback experience. Come see Lucas Million at this year's Scares the Care charity convention in Williamsburg, Virginia, August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, where he will be selling 60 limited edition color copies of Prismatic Words. For a sample of his work, listen to his live reading of My Friend in the Dark at Scares on Friday night at 9:15 p.m. Prismatic Words, available exclusively in paperback on Amazon. The eyes are the window to the soul. Come look inside.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I am Christopher Golden. And Brian, it's a special Excelsior today, my friend, because we are moving on from the Defenders to, but I feel like it's a tangent. It's not jumping tracks here. This is a tangent off of the Defenders. It is the Champions, issues 1 through 3, if we get to 3 today.
That's right. And I got to tell you, man, it's good to have you back. The last 2 weeks, I flew solo. I covered I did a whole episode about Defenders Indefensible. And then last week, I talked about all the post-Bronze Age incarnations of the Defenders, some of which were better versions than others. But it's A, it's good to have you back, but B, it's good to get back into the Bronze Age of Marvel Comics, which, as listeners know, is my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, look, mine too. And especially, I will say, by the way, that of the various iterations that you covered in the last 2 episodes, my favorite is Fearless Defenders.
Yeah, I gave major props. Fearless Defenders and The Last Defenders, which I think gets overlooked a lot, both really shine for my money.
Yeah.
I talked about both of them at length.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yep.
Well, look, we have the Champions 1 through 3 today, if we can get to all 3, and it's such a weird book in so many ways. It's a book that was an accident. I know you're also reading in the Marvel Masterworks, and so we have the introduction by Tony Isabella, but who is the creator of the Champions, but it's like he created it in a weird way, which is just to sum up to folks. This was at a time when Marvel was publishing essentially any fucking thing.
Yep.
And Tony Isabella had pitched a book that was basically Iceman and Angel on the road, much like DC had done Green Lantern, Green Arrow, hard-traveling heroes. This was going to be these 2 young guys on the road in the Marvel Universe. And, it was kicked back to him to basically say, well, it's a team book. And every team book has to have 5 characters, and one of those characters has to be a strong man, and one of those characters has to be female, and one of those characters has to have their own ongoing title. Which is the reason that Hercules, the Black Widow, and Ghost Rider were added to. I mean, we thought the Defenders was an eclectic lineup. The Champions. Now, this being your first exposure to the Champions, Brian, did you just shake your head and go, like, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, again, we should, for new listeners or maybe those who missed the episode when we decided to cover the Champions, I used to buy my comics at the newsstand in the 70s, and I could only get what the newsstand carried. And not every Marvel comic was available. My newsstand never carried the Champions. So this is, in fact, the first time I've read them. What I found immediately endearing, aside from the 70s vibe, it is very similar to those early issues of the Defenders.
It is completely,
which we're going to get to. But what I found interesting from Isabella's introduction here, he wanted to use Defender Luke Cage,
right.
But since Cage lives in New York and the book is set in Los Angeles, he went with Ghost Rider
instead. Well, and frankly, I think the presence of Ghost Rider makes the book much weirder, which makes the book much better.
Ghost Rider's my favorite.
I feel like we wouldn't, had he gone with Luke Cage, as much as I love Luke Cage, I don't think we'd be talking about this book right now.
Yeah.
Because it's the weirdness of it that makes it charming to me.
Agreed.
Even though these first few issues are not great, and we can, they are charming, they're not great, we can sort of sum up, the series gets weirder but better as it goes.
Right.
Particularly when it gets into the hands of John Byrne, but we will get there.
Yes. We open with issue 1, the most power-packed premiere of all in this, the mighty Marvel Renaissance, Stan Lee told us. It's written and conceived by Tony Isabella, penciled by the great Don Heck, inked by Mike Esposito, lettered by Dave Hunt, colored by Petra G., and edited, as many Marvel books were at that time, by Marv Wolfman.
And now I also want to add one last thing before we plug in. I'm not a huge fan of Don Heck necessarily. I think that the art is perfect for its era.
Yeah.
But I can't see a credit as to who drew the cover. But the cover is the selling point of this book. The cover of Champions #1 is fantastic. So
in looking at that cover, it looks like there were probably two different artists, one on layouts and one on finishes. I would guess Sal Buscema and perhaps Gil Kane. I think Gil Kane was just starting at Marvel around this time.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny, so looking at Hercules, it's probably the best drawing of this era's Hercules. And I was actually going to say Buscema as well. So it very well could be. All right, so we plug in, Brian, and our friends Iceman and Angel are on the UCLA campus. And let's just sum up and say, for the sake of summary here, that these 5 characters all just happen to be visiting UCLA on this particular day.
That's right. And it's a turning point in the lives of Angel and Iceman. They're not yet Defenders, but they've reached the age where they're no longer with the X-Men either, and they're talking about that. They can't go back to the X-Men because now it's this new team of newbies who they don't know. Wolverine, Colossus, etc.
Yeah, Nightcrawler, Storm. So they're here at UCLA. Professor X has apparently gotten Bobby Drake a scholarship. Warren doesn't need a scholarship. And Hank McCoy is a member of the Avengers at this point. And they're sort of trying to figure out what the hell to do with their lives, with the team up. I imagine this is probably the first page that Isabella intended for this book before he was told he had to include this other array of characters.
Absolutely.
And then a hole appears in midair. Mike Mignola always teases me about my love for portals hanging in the middle of the air. But here you go. And
out of that hole pours an army of harpies.
What I love about this is the harpies are hideous. This is one of my great memories of this book, is these harpies.
Yeah.
And our friend Hilary Monahan is working on an adult horror novel about harpies. I don't know if she'd want me to spill that, but I can't wait to read it. But anyway,
just did. So you read this first issue off it when it was. I mean, probably not off the stand, but I know you had a stack of old Marvels.
Yeah, no, I read this first issue. I suspect when my mother brought it home for me from Cat's Pharmacy, or I rode my bike down to Travis Drug in Framingham to get it.
Well, that's where your love of Holes in the Air comes from, then.
Exactly. So I love the stuff. The hole opens in the air and the harpies spill out, and of course they start attacking people, and they're looking for someone. Where is she, man-child? And Iceman and Angel go into battle.
That's right. And they make quick work of the harpies. Meanwhile, also on campus, we have Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, who has recently in Marvel continuity broken up with Daredevil. He can't be with her because she's an assassin and she's killed people, even though, a decade later he'd be with Elektra, even though she's done far worse. So this, for me, this was the oddest part of these first three issues. Black Widow is there to get a teaching job.
Yes. Black Widow's there to get a teaching job because they're broke. And she's there with Ivan. And Ivan, for those of you who have not read Bronze Age comics, Ivan was sort of like her sidekick / colleague / driver / butler. But if she's broke, how does she have this guy who's her driver? And it's weird to me that there was never, it's sort of an avuncular relationship.
And what kills me, she's a fucking spy.
Right, exactly.
Go work for somebody else.
Right now, Tony Isabella is going, shh, Brian, it's okay.
I get it. Tony he gets the editorial edict. He's got to get them all together on campus. But I just, Ivan, probably one of my most beloved sidekicks in Marvel continuity.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
I especially at the hands of Frank Miller in those issues of Daredevil when Black Widow gets poisoned by the ninjas, and he's a great supporting character. I want a book that's Ivan and Rick Jones and
the sidekicks. Well, the other thing is, we might not get through all three issues of this, but the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is it just reminds me that, like, I wish that Marvel would follow the logic and create, because they bring in all these great new characters and then they cancel the books, and when they do debut a team book, and again, nothing wrong with these team books, but like the current champions, it makes sense because they're sort of popular young characters. But there's a place for a team book right now at Marvel that is, made up of a bunch of characters who were popular enough to carry their own titles for a long time, maybe, but now currently don't have their own titles, or were the second bananas in titles, and to keep those characters going. And that's what the purpose of this book was, the champion.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. While Ivan and Natasha are talking about her new job teaching Russian to college students, another hole appears in the air.
And spilling from that, Brian?
They are Amazons, but they are not Wonder Woman's Amazons. These are Marvel Amazons.
Right. These are Marvel Amazons. And they have come in search of the Greek goddess Venus.
That's right.
Ivan and Natasha jump into a fight, and Ivan, as is his role in the Black Widow's life, gets knocked on the head and is knocked unconscious, much like Giles in every episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So then what happens is, the gorgeous teacher, Dr. Victoria Starr, enters the room, Brian, but she is not.
She's not. We're gonna spoil it for you, folks. She's actually the goddess Venus, hanging out on Earth as Professor Victoria Starr.
And she recognizes immediately that these are Hippolyta's Amazons. Hippolyta being the queen of the Amazons. And in DC continuity, the mother of Wonder Woman, but let's not forget this is not DC.
That's right. Black Widow. This is perfect Black Widow. I like to think that when they when they were filming the MCU movies with Black Widow, that they gave her this issue of Champions for research. She's having none of this bullshit, and she's willing to take them all on. And I think she's doing all right, but Venus insists that she can't fight them all by herself.
Right. Yeah. So they so they go out the door, and the Black Widow swings away with Venus in her arms, and to me that would be the perfect beginning of a whole separate series about their romance, but that's not what this is about. And then we cut away to somebody else who just coincidentally happens to be at UCLA today. My
favorite character in the book already.
Yeah, no doubt whatsoever.
Yep. And another defender. He was short. His time with the team was short-lived, but it's Johnny Blaze, aka the Ghost Rider.
Yep, in the prime of his time as Ghost Rider, by the way.
Yep.
And he's at this point in Ghost Rider. This is concurrent with Ghost Rider number 13 or so. That basically he's at this point where when there's danger nearby, the Ghost Rider takes over.
That's right.
Johnny Blaze transforms into the Ghost Rider.
And we should clarify as well. In later issues of Ghost Rider, when the Ghost Rider took over Johnny Blaze's form, it was actually the demon Zarathos with the demon's intellect and consciousness.
Right.
At this stage, the demon takes over, but Johnny Blaze is still in control. It's still his thoughts, his consciousness.
Yeah, it's still Johnny in control. What's interesting here is that the character who appears, who is this version of Cerberus, the Greek guardian of the gates of hell, appears in a very Jack Kirby design.
Yes, very much so.
He's not a dog yet, but he becomes a dog later. But it's very much a Kirby design.
Yep. So we get Ghost Rider fighting the dog of hell, the dog that guards Hades in Roman mythology, and we then transition to my other favorite character in the book. This is a character. My first introduction to him in Marvel continuity was the Hercules miniseries of the very early 80s. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I hated it.
Yeah, I see. You're
talking about the one that's like in space or something, right?
Yeah. My only other interaction with him was during the Defenders for a Day saga.
You had not read him in like when he would appear in Thor or
nope,
in Avengers and stuff?
My newsstand never carried Thor.
Okay.
And I just, for whatever reason, I'd only seen him in Defender for a Day. And then I got that 80s Hercules in space miniseries where he's got the recorder following him around, and it was slapstick, which you weren't getting a lot of in Marvel comics at the time. And what I like here is he's played straight. There's no blah-ha-ha moment whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's what I want to say I found really interesting, because, of course, I stumbled across the character of Hercules in old issues that my uncle had or whatever of Thor, of Avengers. I believe there's an issue of the Hulk, if I remember correctly, where he and the Hulk, meet like in the desert or something. I don't remember, but
right.
What I find really fascinating is, folks, if you're unfamiliar with this era of Marvel Comics, but you have seen all the MCU movies, Thor in the MCU, after the first two movies, Thor from Thor Ragnarok and from the last couple of Avengers movies, is Hercules.
Absolutely.
From the 1970s Marvel Comics. In this era, Thor was like stick up his butt, serious, earnest at all times. Hercules was the one who was drinking mead and having a good time and betting women and all that stuff. So there's no doubt in my mind that Thor is this Hercules.
Absolutely. And Hercules is on campus because he's been booked for a speaking engagement.
Yes, which seems to be the thing in the 70s and 80s that colleges would routinely book superheroes like Hank McCoy and Hercules for speaking engagements. So Herc comes in and is immediately set upon by, and here's the thing I don't really understand. Hercules doesn't recognize them. They are mutates, destined to rule the planet in eons to come.
That's right.
Who the fuck are these guys?
Okay, well, now Brian will bring out his Marvel knowledge.
This is why I'm asking you.
There are several types of mutates in the Marvel Universe. The term itself refers to anybody who got their superpowers not by genetics or by birth. So an inhuman would not be a mutate. A mutant would not be a mutate. But someone like
creatures created by the High Evolutionary, right?
They're not mutates.
Oh, they're not. Okay, all right.
No, it would be like Hulk, Spider-Man, Captain America. These are all mutates. However, the term then became part of X-Men lore. Magneto turned a lot of the denizens of the Savage Land into mutates.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then there was a third group of mutates, which is what we're looking at here, created by Jack Kirby, and they were part of the Eternals lore.
Okay.
They were deviants who basically got superpowers at birth, and it was supposedly one day they would rule the planet. It was prophesied.
So we may see them in the upcoming Eternals film.
Oh, absolutely. At the very least, we'll see the deviants, I'm sure.
Well, and again, I'm not surprised now because I see the reference that they've previously appeared in Thor, and although there was the occasional issue, I was never a big fan of the Thor comics. I think because I'm a huge Norse mythology nerd.
Right.
Like, I love Norse mythology, as people who read my work probably know, and so I was never a big reader of the Thor comics, and that may explain because it seems they appeared pretty regularly in those comics.
Right.
Anyway, so Hercules is wailing on these guys. The Prince of Power fights on. Of all the characters that refer to themselves as their subtitle in third person, I love when Hercules calls himself the Prince of Power.
And he and the mutates fall out of the building onto the ground as Ghost Rider is driving by.
And here's the moment of the issue. This is the moment of the issue, Brian.
Go ahead.
And Ghost Rider grabs Hercules by the wrist and swings him up behind him on his hell cycle to as if he's like the damsel in distress in the 70s. And then you have this scene of Hercules. You have this panel of Hercules riding behind Ghost Rider, with Ghost Rider saying, "The whole campus is going crazy. Look!" And then Hercules, "By the cloven hooves of Pan, Amazon warriors and harpies here on Earth." And they're after the Angel, Iceman, Black Widow, and Venus.
Yep.
Now, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. So, Hercules says, you help the other mortals, Ghost Rider, and I will deal with the Devil Hound. And we get this second buddy pairing in the book, not just Angel and Iceman, but Hercules and Ghost Rider.
Yeah. Yeah, the unlikeliest buddying up of all time.
Yeah,
and again, this is why
like,
I love this book, because it's like my favorite issues of Marvel Team Up and Marvel 2-in-1, where you have these characters who don't belong together, but you throw them into battle together, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
Anyway, Venus uses her power to make all the mutates fall to their knees because they're reeling with the light and love that she emanates.
Just like if we have Marianne Williamson as president?
Yes, that's exactly right. And then the champions, because they are now the champions, are attacked from behind as another giant hole appears, hanging in the sky, in the air. And who should appear, Brian?
It's Pluto. This, he's the lord of the underworld in Greek mythology, and with him is the war god Ares,
who will later be an Avenger, much later be an Avenger.
Yes, and And
Hippolyta, the queen of the
Apollo.
Amazons.
That's right. And he says that before this day is over, Zeus has decreed that Venus is going to marry Ares and Hercules is going to marry Hippolyta, or the universe will die.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. Again, it's like this is silly shit, folks, but in the best possible way. All right, issue 2. We pick up where we left off. That the issue is called "Whom the Gods Would Join." By the way, we didn't go. So yes, it is also by now. This is a book we're going to have to talk a lot about the creative teams, because the creative teams on the Champions meager 17 issues change, from issue to issue, and But in here we do still have Tony Isabella as the writer, Don Heck as the artist, John Tartag as the inker. I've never heard of him before. And yeah, so we jump in where we left off with the 6 champions, because Venus is ostensibly a champion at this point. And we get the recap of where we are. And then Ares punches Hercules in the stomach.
Yeah, Ares and Hercules go at it, and fight ensues. Hercules throws Ares into Hippolyta and tells her he'd rather marry one of the harpies. And then he goes after Pluto, and Pluto is making quick work of Hercules. So the Black Widow sort of takes it upon herself to be team leader here and comes up with a plan on how to help him.
Well, look, let's face it. Of all the characters in the Champions, Black Widow is the only one that would make an acceptable team leader.
Agreed.
I mean, as far as a strategic mind, at first, Ghost Rider's never been a member of a group before. Angel and Iceman.
Well, that's not true. That's not true.
You're talking about Legion of Monsters?
Legion of Monsters. It lasted one issue, but he was...
Well, there you go. He's never been an effective leader, and you couldn't even call them a group, really. They were more of a cluster. Although we should cover those 2 or 3 appearances.
We should.
Anyway, basically Pluto makes short work of Hercules, because Hercules once signed an unbreakable Olympian contract with him. Pluto says he did release Hercules from certain of its conditions, but others are yet binding. So that's why Pluto finds it so easy to defeat Hercules. Pluto attacks the rest of the champions, try to attack him. He fights back, but Venus and by the way, they're on the other side of this hole in the sky, in the air, right?
That's right, because Pluto is trying to drag Hercules back through the hole,
right?
And Venus and Black Widow, while Angel and Ghost Rider distract Pluto, they rescue the unconscious Hercules. And then Iceman, and this is important, this will come in later.
Yes.
Iceman closes up the hole in the air with a big ball of ice. He freezes it over.
Yes, yes. And he says he's going to construct the Matterhorn on the spot. The Matterhorn being a giant icy mountain, for those of you who didn't grow up on Bugs Bunny cartoons. Anyway. Where the hell? Yeah. So basically, Iceman is remarking or thinking about the fact that Angel seems to have his shit together for the first time in months because of this opportunity to go into action and to be part of a team. And on the other side of that portal, Pluto and Ares and Hippolyta are arguing about what to do. And so Pluto essentially transports them to Olympus, where they appear before Zeus.
That's right.
There you go.
And we then find out that Pluto has reached out to other rulers in the Marvel Universe, rulers of the dead throughout the dimensions, who might also feel the unjust persecution of their peers. So we see here he's reached out to Mephisto and Satan and who's the guy in the green? Is that supposed to be Nightmare?
You know what? I have the weird feeling that it's supposed to be Nightmare because of the costume, but it doesn't really look like him.
It doesn't. So basically, it's like Trump and Kim Jong-un getting together.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah, but basically they've formed an alliance, and they only seek peace and security for their dark realms. They don't want to assault any other realm, but they will if they have to.
Right, and because of this alliance that Pluto has made, he's basically forcing Zeus. He's saying, look, give me what I want, or my new allies and I will all destroy you.
Right.
Will destroy Olympus. And the universe, the whole universe will be torn asunder because Pluto doesn't get... and I don't know why he wants these arranged marriages, really, but that's what... Oh, I know why. Because he wants to destroy Olympus, and only Hercules and Venus have the power to stop him from destroying Olympus. And according to Olympian law, no husband could stand against his wife, and no wife could stand against her husband, and so they would not be able to fight back if these marriages take place. This is pretty convoluted, particularly in this issue. And I'm getting that in there. All you need to know is that these marriages need to take place so that Pluto can take over Olympus.
That's right.
And then we introduce this character called the Huntsman, who previously appeared in Submariner. Again, a very Jack Kirby-esque character, who attacks, who's been sent by Pluto to attack the champions.
Right. He has a spear of fire that paralyzes those who it strikes, and it strikes the champions, paralyzing everybody except Ghost Rider because his satanic power protects him from that.
It's like Bracken.
Yeah. So he strikes back at the Huntsman, knocks him out of the sky. Black Widow and Angel also recover, but they figure out that Hercules and Venus are still paralyzed. Apparently, the weapon is more effective against Olympians,
which we'll need that for later. And I love this moment here on the next page, where Black Widow begins giving out assignments. She's giving instructions to her fellow champions. And Angel says, well, it looks like you've become the leader of our little group in record time. And then in that word balloon that looks like ice,
yep,
Black Widow says, is that an objection, young man? And Angel says, heck no. You're a darn sight more attractive than the last team leader I worked with. Which is Angel's mindset, folks. Warren Worthington.
Yep.
So then they're going out to attack the Huntsman again.
And he summons a giant monster, and we have some pages of them fighting the giant monster. I don't know.
That's all we need to know.
Yeah.
And then his staff is knocked out of his hands, the Huntsman. Angel prevents him from getting it back. But he has powers of his own, and it's the power to bypass time and space and send them elsewhere. That's
right. And elsewhere is where Johnny Blaze, a.k.a. the Ghost Rider, is waiting. He's kind of guarding the unconscious Hercules and Venus. And suddenly, another hole appears, and out of it steps what seems to be Ares, Pluto, and Hippolyta, but they're talking very strangely.
Yes. This is a trick that's been played on him, unfortunately. The Huntsman, who has whatever convenient power he needs at the moment, has made the Ghost Rider think that Black Widow, Angel, and Iceman are Ares, Pluto, and Hippolyta. So the Ghost Rider blasts them, knocks them out, and blasts them and knocks them out.
Yep.
And the Huntsman manages to get Venus and Hercules and spirit them away to wherever.
Exactly.
And they want to track down the Huntsman, but they don't know how. And Johnny Blaze is feeling pretty badly for himself for screwing this up.
That's right. And there we have the pathos that impacts every team book. Here it is in our second issue.
Exactly. And the team already appears to be splitting up at the end of issue 2. All right, so we will get through these 3 issues. I think because so much of this, like, you need to just sort of sum up, because it was fairly convoluted, and we weren't getting too much into the character relationships yet, because there aren't any. Now, issue 3, remember I said, folks, that we were going to have a lot of changes here. Issue 3 already is plotted by Tony Isabella, scripted by Bill Mantlo.
One of my favorite Bronze Age writers. I don't think he gets enough credit.
I agree.
Yeah.
Penciled by George Tuska, which is a great change from the previous Don Heck issues, I think. Inked by Vince Colletta. I'll also note that the letterer was Karen Mantlo, who I believe was Bill Mantlo's wife.
Yep.
There were a lot of... Somebody needs to do a book about the Marvel bullpen that's not the one that was already done, but that would be about the... not just Marvel, but about the comics industry community in this era. Because there were so many husbands and wives, people met on the job in the freelance community. I'd be really interested to read that the sort of history.
I would too. I like when our friend of the show, Scott Edelman, he occasionally posts remembrances on his blog. Those are always a joy to read. And Jim Shooter, for a long time, was sort of writing a memoir on his blog.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's there's pages and pages and pages of entries. Now, keep in mind, Shooter was a controversial figure in comics, and his blog entries are very much from his perspective. But I think they're a fascinaing read.
Listen, I know Shooter was controversial, and he's an interesting guy. All I will say is that during his time at Valiant, Shooter was very kind to me, and this is a story most people don't know. At some point, perhaps in the not too distant future, I'm going to write my memoir. But I was supposed to come on and write Magnus Robot Fighter as a very young man, as an untried, almost completely untried comics writer. I was going to come on and write a run on Magnus Robot Fighter, and Shooter had gotten samples from me and plots from me, and then said, all right, look, we're just doing this big Unity event. As soon as it's over, call me and we'll schedule your scripts. We'll get you on board. And I called him, and he'd been fired. So I have a lot of stories like that from my early days working in comics. But yeah, that's my experience with Jim Shooter. Anyway, Champions 3. Assault on Olympus.
Yeah, fantastic opening splash page here by George Tuska.
Yep. Looks a lot like some of the opening splash pages we will later see in the New Defenders.
Yep.
It's Angel in a Speedo. Iceman, they're on the beach in California. Iceman has created himself a little skating rink.
Yep.
Which I like.
Black Widow's lounging on the deck in a bikini.
Yeah, very sexy days.
Yep.
And the cover's a little difficult. It's a little busy, but anyway, the presence of Mantlo. No offense to Tony Isabella, the presence of Mantlo is immediately noticeable and immediately helpful.
Right. And we get some character development here. In the New Defenders, of course, Bobby is always sort of the clown. And we see that here in the Champions. Black Widow saying, you'd think he'd be heartbroken over what happened with Hercules and Venus, but look at the idiot out there ice skating. And Angel's explaining, don't let his games fool you. He's just as sick about what happened as we are. He just doesn't show it.
Right. And then we see that that's true. That we see a lot of thought balloons where Iceman is sort of brooding about all the things that have happened and how the X-Men are doing just fine without Angel and Iceman. And, again, we're back to this thing where Hank's with the Avengers, and the girl he loved, Lorna Dane, is only interested in Havoc, Alex Summers.
Yep.
And then we get a page that is a recap of the previous 2 issues, which is helpful to break it down. And then Johnny Blaze, the Ghost Rider, rides in with good news that will lighten Iceman's mood.
That's right. Back on the campus, he overheard some students talking about a mountain that was on the campus, and he rode over to see it, and it's Iceman's mountain. Remember, we told you this would be important. It's there, and there it was, big and hard and frozen as ever.
Much like Bobby Drake.
And yeah, Johnny Blaze points out all the other portals, to Olympus have closed, but because Iceman froze that one, it's still open. All they have to do is go through the ice, and they can rescue Hercules and Venus.
Exactly. Dun, dun, dun.
Now, Chris, I'm going to let you take over from here, and I'll chime in, but you know how I feel about pages and pages of gods fighting. It's never been my thing in Marvel.
Well, yes. I will sum this up.
Yeah, I enjoyed these 3 issues. This was my least favorite of the 3.
Oh, interestingly, I enjoyed these 3 issues. I wouldn't say this is my favorite of the 3. My favorite would be the first one because it has the harpies in it. But this one, at least I felt like it was clearer. I thought Mantlo did a really good job sort of summing things up. But you know what? Basically it's Hercules and Venus being angry at Zeus. They're in captivity. They're arguing about this whole wedding. Hercules is pissed that Zeus is sort of cowardly saying he can't do anything about it. The universe is at stake. And then the huntsman wanders off and just sort of happens to stumble upon the Olympus side of the ice mountain, which strangely seems to be melting and feels warm, Brian, because from the other side, Ghost Rider's hellfire is burning its way through, and the champions burst forth.
That's right.
The huntsman calls his allies. There's a lot of fighting. And we get to see, my favorite moment in this issue actually is Black Widow and Iceman back to back. And that's what's, I think, really good about this series is, as you said, in the last issue, we had the Ghost Rider Hercules team up. And we have these unlikely characters together, and we get to see the combinations. So we have Black Widow and Iceman back to back, facing an army. And Iceman says, I remember Bobby Drake is supposed to be in his late teens at this point.
Yep.
He says, "You want to know something, lady? With you at my back, I kind of like the odds." And Black Widow, the sophisticated, worldly, super spy, says, "Though you are still comparatively young, Bobby Drake, you fight and compliment like a man." And Iceman says, "Widow, you've just kicked my ego right out of the ballpark. Thanks, I mean it." And what's interesting about this scene is, like, we've just seen Bobby brooding and brooding and brooding, and he always is portrayed as like the guy who's trying to please everybody or make everybody laugh because he's the youngest and he wants to fit in and all of this stuff. So we have this moment of Bobby Drake being treated like an adult by the Black Widow.
Yeah.
And complimenting him. And I really liked it. I really liked that moment. Again, I know, we won't talk about the 2019 context of you fight like a man, but,
right.
Anyway, there you go. And
yeah. We then get some Game of Thrones palace intrigue. You got Zeus and Pluto with Hercules and Venus before them. And, Hercules is defiant. He's standing up to his father. He's saying, make your decree. I'm not going to listen to you. The huntsman busts in and tells him, "Oh, the champions are here." And
Brian, I love how Angel, the least powerful member of the champions, manages to deal with the huntsman.
Yep.
He grabs his staff and swings him around until the huntsman has to let go, and he smashes his head against the wall and is unconscious.
Knocks him the fuck out. And then Hercules faces off against Ares, and Venus faces off against Hippolyta.
When Hercules faces off against Ares, something happens. Because Hercules is supposed to be helpless against them because of Pluto's previous deals with Hercules, but something happens. Zeus, who is not supposed to be aiding them in any way, has somehow intervened, and Hercules is now able to fight them.
That's right. That's right. We then get what is my favorite moment in this issue. You know, you get Hercules. He's happy that the champions are there, and you know, Pluto's like, okay, I'm gonna clean the clocks with you. Hercules says, "Get thee behind me, mortals. Your strength is no match for Pluto." And then Venus says, "Neither is yours, you idiots."
Yeah, you ignoramus. That's a Mary and Brian moment if I've ever read one. Hey, dumbass.
And as the champions hold back, one member of the team strides forward.
And
that
it's
is
Ghost Rider.
That's right. And he goes over to Zeus. And, you know, keep in mind, Johnny Blaze, created by Satan. Okay.
Yep.
He doesn't fear Zeus. He goes up to him. He says, you know, Zeus, you're the only one who can stand against Pluto. And you copped out, sucker. Was it easy to sell your own son to death, pal?
Yeah. He basically goes over and guilts him. He's like, look, I'm an idiot. I made a deal with Satan, and I know I'm an idiot, but what's your excuse?
That's right.
So there you go. So Zeus finally realizes that he's been duped, that he finally realizes that Pluto's deal with the other lords of the other underworlds has to do with him being able to get Olympus. He realizes that this deal is probably not what it appears to be. So basically, all it takes is Zeus saying, you know, I allowed a mortal weakness to possess me so that I didn't see your duplicity. He basically says, get the fuck home. Go away. I don't want you here anymore. And Pluto slinks off. So instead of it being a big fight at the end, it's just Zeus waking up and going, I've been a moron, and yelling at Pluto, and Pluto leaves. Then we find out that Venus has decided that, Venus intervenes and argues in favor of Ares and convinces Zeus not to punish him.
Right.
Which is interesting because we do have this love and war thing going on. The goddess of love, the god of war. And so Zeus agrees.
Yep.
Anyway, so Venus is going to stay behind. She's not going to go back to being Dr. Victoria Starr on the campus because she's no longer needed as the MacGuffin to get them onto the campus.
That's right. And then you know, Hercules bids his father farewell, and Zeus sends the champions back home to Earth.
Yeah.
But you know,
back home to Earth, and they are a team. You know, by the end of these 3 issues. They are a team, and Angel ends with saying back. But what happens next?
That's right.
And the next issue, at the time, this was bi-monthly, by the way. So 60 days later, we would see Murder at Malibu, guest written by Chris Claremont.
That's right.
Drawn by George Tuska, inked by Vince Coletta. So again, you know, just the sort of constant changes you know, in this series. It's just really interesting to me.
It is.
So what did you think of your first exposure to the Champions, Brian?
I liked it. You know, like I said, I love 1970s Marvel comics. The Bronze Age is my sweet spot, and this scratched it. You know, in flipping ahead through Masterworks, I see that Black Goliath is going to show up.
Yep.
The original Red Guardian. You know, there's a lot of callbacks to the Defenders here.
Yes.
So, you know, it definitely very firmly fits in with the theme of our show. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
By the way, I was not kidding. I went on eBay and picked up all 5 issues of the short-lived Black Goliath mini series.
Right.
Because it turned out I didn't have them. And so I hope that we will do those.
Absolutely.
In a coming episode or 2.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, he's in the Defenders during the Defender for a Day saga. He's here in the Champions for quite a long run.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think I think we absolutely should cover those.
Yeah, in his introduction, Tony Isabella says he had initially wanted Black Goliath. He was going to do a Black Goliath series, and I think that's why he ends up in the Champions later.
Right.
So these are sort of these were contemporary series. They came out around the same time.
Yep.
So
all right, folks. Well, Chris, now off the air, you told me about some changes that were going to be taking place with Three Guys with Beards. When this airs, will those changes have been taken place?
That is a good question. Probably not, because and we have talked about it on Three Guys, so we can talk about it now.
Okay.
Jim Moore has been very sick for almost a month. So he seems to be, I think, on the mend. But he had a serious infection. And so we're waiting to see what the cause of all of that was.
Right.
So we have been delayed in our switchover. We still have we've got 98 episodes with episode 100. That episode 100 will be the last episode with Jonathan and myself as regular co-hosts.
Right.
We will be stepping back to the guest host category, and the other Two Guys with Beards stepping in for us will be Bracken McLeod and Tom Snogoski.
But in the meantime, if folks enjoyed Defenders Dialogue, they can tune into Three Guys with Beards and still hear your dulcet tones.
Indeed.
And if that's not enough for you, you can tune into the Horror Show with Brian Keene and hear my dulcet tones as well. Both of those podcasts are made available wherever you listen to Defenders Dialogue by the Project Entertainment Network. If you go to projectentertainmentnetwork.com, you can get Defenders Dialogue t-shirts and coffee mugs and bumper stickers. And you can wear one of those t-shirts to the next convention Chris and I are at, and let us know that you're a listener. And we will add you to the tally. I think we're over a dozen listeners now. So
are we a dozen? Wow,
I think so.
That's 4 times the number that I ever imagined.
All right, folks, we will see you back here next week with more champions. Chris,
more champions chat on Defenders Dialogue.
There you go. And you got to say the magic word. I just stepped on it. Say it again. You got to say it again.
Hey, so let's say it together.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Excelsior! True believers. See you later.
Wasn't together.
Close enough.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the Horror Show with Brian Keene. A Mando Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocastic on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows.
Three Guys with Beards, Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybar and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast on.
Brian Keene of the Horror Show.
Chuck Buda and Armand Rosamilia of the Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban Sick of Ink Stains.
Bizong's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.